It's time.
Hey guys, I am here with John Danaher again. John, it is so great to see you. How are you doing today?
Very good, thank you.
So, are you pleased with your performance from Gordon Ryan today? Not bad, right?
Yeah, it was an amazing performance. Gordon had his last three training camps for his last three performances have all been outstanding. It's hard to get consistent back-to-back camps with such a short notice between each. Typically, the camps for grappling are much shorter than for mixed martial arts, because mixed martial arts only usually fight once or twice a year. These guys have to do it every so often. So the camps are typically 2 to 3 weeks. So he's been going literally back-to-back fight camps for different opponents, different rule sets. He went from facing Keenan Cornelius, where we were anticipating a very, very long match, which has a completely different cadence to EBI, where it's all done in 10 minutes with overtime. Everything's about quick reaction. So to switch effortlessly from completely, literally 100% different rule sets in such a short time was incredibly impressive on his part.
It really was. And I think that so many people like watching him compete in those multiple rule sets, because he seems to be somebody who can adapt to the rule sets. And there aren't a lot of people who maybe we don't know if they can, but they don't seem like they're interested in doing as much as he is. He's literally putting himself out there, each one of those.
Yeah, no, that has come absolutely true in the last few months. I'm also very intrigued by, interestingly, Gordon was the smallest guy here tonight.
Yeah.
I don't think we've ever had an EBI where we were the big guys. So even though the weight category is 185, Gordon really is 183. That's what he walks around at. So the other fighters were coming down in weight to fight at 185. Gordon came in at what he really is. So his next trial will be at 205, where he will be an absolute midget. He was the smallest guy at 185. Yeah. He's going to be tiny at 205. So that will be a real test.
I have to ask this because I'm so intrigued to know how this process works. Does Gordon come up to you and say, hey, we're facing Keenan? Does Gordon come up to you and say, you know what, I'm thinking about doing something in EBI, and then do you suggest 205, or how does this process work?
Well, it's actually complicated by the fact, or simplified by the fact, that we're essentially a team of 3 people. So we have other people who are junior members or who are aspiring, but essentially it's 3 people. So it's pretty easy to select who's going to go in. Also, our team is only allowed 1 competitor per event. Every other team is allowed more than 1. We're only allowed 1. So it's usually pretty easy to make the selection process.
Is that a compliment at sometimes? Because I know it could be intrusive that you don't get the guys to come in and not everybody can compete. But then also, is it a compliment that you guys are so good that they're like, whoa, just one of you, okay?
Yeah, in a way it is. Of course, at the EBI open weight, it would have been tragic if we only had 1 person. We would have been eliminated, but we needed 2 that night. So it is a disadvantage, but we'll deal with it. And we're confident that our training program prepares our athletes very, very well for the rule set. And it was wonderful to watch Gordon excel here again tonight.
Absolutely. And speaking of Gordon excelling, let's talk a little bit about Keenan. You said that you were anticipating a long match. You write these posts now, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in a second. But when you write these posts, you give such a detailed idea of what's going on before and after the fight that's intrinsically interesting to all of us who are nerds about this sort of thing. Was there stuff that surprised you between Keenan and Gordon?
Well, we have a pretty good understanding of Keenan's game. I've always been an admirer of Keenan Cornelius. I've always admired the way he plays the sport. He's another very versatile grappler. He can do any rule set. He's got a very wide array of submission holds, which made him a fascinating guy to prepare against. Many of the modern Jiu-Jitsu players typically have 3 or 4 things they do well. Keenan does the whole game well, and that was a really interesting fight camp. But still, based on the videotape we had a pretty good understanding of what to expect with Keenan, and what makes it difficult for someone like Keenan to game plan against us is that many of the things that we do, especially in the lower body work, just isn't known to them. Like everything they do, we kind of know what they're doing, and it's more or less standard jiu-jitsu approaches, so we know it as well as they do. But on the other hand, the reverse is not true. Like they can see the broad picture of what we do, but not the fine details. And at that level of competition, that's what makes a difference.
I find that so interesting, especially now that we're also seeing Gary and Gordon, very active on social media. You are also now active on social media, but when you're watching the two of them write these things, what's going on in your head? Because everybody knows what they're thinking, but I don't know if we always find, like, are you humored by it? Do you, like, chime in and go, like, add this sentence? Like, how does it go? No?
I do not tell them what to write. Despite their seeming immaturity, they are grown men, and I don't tell them what to do. Sometimes they ask for advice. They'll say, I would like to fight this guy, and there's times I caution them. For example, I had a long talk with Gary Toner when he got ready to fight Palhares. I told him, Gary, I'm 100% confident that technically you can win this, but physically he's a big guy and he's enhanced and you're not, and this could be a problem. My main concern in that fight, for example, was not even submissions; it was just getting slammed or something, or just something crazy, a fight breaking out. Something you just couldn't normally anticipate. But so there's times I caution them, but then once they convey to me that this is a project they're interested in, I back them 100%.
Awesome. Now I want to know, how long does it spend in terms of time for you to craft these messages that you're putting on Facebook? Because I try to write something and I go, paragraph, I'm done. I see you put time into it. It's like a chapter in a novel each time.
You're misunderstanding me and greatly overestimating me. Typically, at the end of a day of teaching, I take a short subway ride home, or to a supermarket to buy my daily groceries. I can't plan more than 2 days ahead, so I buy groceries every single day. And so on the subway train and at the grocery store, I'll write whatever random thoughts I had that day. So a random thought, I see Gary did something interesting, let me write about that. Or a memory that I had of, I'm on the subway and I remember something George St. Pierre did 5 years ago. Oh, that's interesting, let me write about that. So it's completely random. They're not really well thought out. The grammar is awful. And
you think so?
So yeah, appalling.
Okay.
Even my poor long-suffering readers often write, Danaher, you need to learn how to use paragraphs. And I initially the problem was technical. Every time I went to put a paragraph, the thing got posted. It was so I didn't even know what to do. But then when one of my students thankfully pointed out the right way to do it, then I just forgot to add paragraphs. Because I usually write for Instagram, so I just write, and then post, and then I'm happy. And then people are like, what the hell? Where's the paragraphs?
Have you ever lost anything that you were writing on the Instagram?
There's a good story with that. One night I was saying, you know what, I'm going to say something important tonight. So I wrote and wrote and wrote, and it was just like this giant wall of text, and it was just growing exponentially. It just got larger and larger and larger. It's like a tsunami of words. So I'm in a cab at this point. I'm leaving the supermarket. It was such a long project that went far beyond the supermarket. I'm in a cab. We hit a bump. I press something, I know not what, and it just disappears. I'm like, no, please. And I tried to retrieve it. I made some dreadful mistake where I just omitted it. It was just gone, lost forever. And it was from my best stuff. But there were no paragraphs, I'm sorry. But yeah.
The ages, guys, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And after that, I wrote like a 2-sentence Instagram post in disgust. It was like, that's all for today. Yeah, I'm done writing.
It's funny. So people noticed that you went on Instagram and Facebook after we did our interview. So they've been attributing it to me, and I'm taking all the credit without actually deserving it.
You're
so
100% wrong.
I'm 100% wrong?
Yeah. No, the reason was practical. I'm almost 50 years old, and I've been in the sport a long time, and Jiu-Jitsu is my absolute passion, but I do believe that changes are necessary in the sport of Jiu-Jitsu if it's to remain relevant as a fighting art. I don't just want to teach Jiu-Jitsu, I want to change it. And I do believe that certain changes could be made, not to the sport overall. I still love the traditional sport of Jiu-Jitsu, but I do believe that there should be alternative methods which people who are interested in those alternatives can make use of, especially those who are interested in transitioning to the sport of mixed martial arts. And I wanted to communicate to more than just my 3 or 4 students who did this, and to try and create a movement of people. EBI was a fantastic project because people often say, well, my system of Jiu-Jitsu is very different from, say, Eddie Bravo's 10th Planet system. But Mr. Bravo and I actually do, even though we disagree a lot about the techniques of Jiu-Jitsu, which ones we emphasize. The overall plan for the sport we have is surprisingly similar, that we both believe that it's in need of change. There has to be changes in it. It must go back to its roots as a sport founded upon the art of submission. That's often misunderstood as submissions from anywhere. That is absolutely not the case. What I'm trying to say is that traditionally jiu-jitsu has been taught position and submission, and position comes first, and submission is like the icing on the cake. That's always been the model. People have to understand that control is a much deeper and richer concept than just position. There are many forms of control, quite different from position. And position is just one of many methods of control. So when traditionalists watch what we do here, to them it looks like a mess. It's like these people are going for stuff. They're going from anywhere. No, they're not going from anywhere. There's control going on, at least at the levels among the athletes that I coach. There's control going on, but it's a very different form of control from the classical relative position model, which most people know. And it's hard for them to understand that because they come from a background. You must understand, I too came from that background. This is the background I was raised in. So I know how they're thinking, and I know their confusion because I went through it too when I started making changes. And I do have doubts. Like my biggest fear is that it will degenerate into a sport where people just randomly go after submissions with no control. Yeah. That would be a disaster. It would be humiliated if that turned out to be the effect that I had on the business. But I think people are starting to understand now. They can look at the manner in which my athletes work, and they can see there is something qualitatively different about what they're doing as opposed to what their opponents are doing, where they can sense a notion of control. That makes sense. And they're starting to learn, they're starting to understand that. I'm getting very positive feedback on social media. There's a lot of people who I can see in their comments are making astute observations. They're learning and they're picking it up. And changes take time. They're not going to happen overnight. But I'm confident that if we push the message and there's positive role models that people can follow, people like Gordon Ryan, Gary Tonin, and Eddie Cummings. I'm not, as I said, I'm not trying to say the old style of jiu-jitsu doesn't work. It's not my first. I'm just saying that it's not the only way of doing things, and there are advantages to the system that we use, just as there are advantages to the old system. But I do believe it's presenting a very interesting contrast. Every so often we get fascinating matchups like tonight with someone like Eduardo Tellez, who had himself an unorthodox approach.
Absolutely.
What did you think about that? It was fascinating. I loved it. Some of my favorite EBI matches of all time. And his control of the human body from the elbow to the wrist was some of the best I've ever seen. When he couldn't get the control he needed from hip to ankle, he's just not used to that. But if he learned that, he would be a very, very interesting guy to watch. He also, I believe, he just didn't have a strategy for the overtime. He just didn't understand what
it's a tougher thing to navigate that, especially when you play from that turn.
That was tough.
Can I reveal something to you?
Yeah.
When you were about to touch this arm and this part of my arm, I thought you were going to break it, but I'm glad you didn't, so thank you.
I'm a nice person.
Say you love crepes.
Say you
love crepes. It's like a thin pancake. It's fine.
God. You're right. Was that the things that stood out to you the most today at EBI?
Not the most, but it's one of many fascinating things that I saw. But it's interesting to watch someone who came from. Eduardo Tellez has been very, very successful in the traditional style of jiu-jitsu. He's unorthodox within that realm, but you could see that. As great as his performance was tonight, you could see he was struggling with elements of the new game. Yes. It was like, I need to learn stuff.
That's cool.
And I love the energy. Jimmy Hartle's talking, and he said, I've got to learn the lower body game. And it's great when you see people. He was raised in the same tradition I was. The traditional model of Brazilian jiu-jitsu. And it was wonderful to see him looking at what was going on here tonight and saying, I can see something useful on this, and I'm going to make the necessary changes. I love that. But this is why we're on social media.
I avoided social media for decades.
I know, and it looked like you were almost reluctant in how you were coming into it, but then once you found the way that you could do it on your terms and, you know, speaking directly to people and doing it, you just go, well, all right, I'm joining the beast. So as somebody who reads your posts frequently and has laughed at your musings on Kylo Ren and your ability to mix that in with concrete jiu-jitsu practitioner candy is what this is. It gives us insight to not necessarily that we wouldn't have, because a lot of us aren't in your gym, so we wouldn't see it all the time. But if you get the opportunity to read it, you look at it and you go, this is really cool. Oh, this is really fascinating and interesting. And it brings up good discussions, I think, on social media as well. I have to ask you this before we get out of here. GSP returning. Is that a thing? Are you allowed to talk about it? Where do you know anything about it?
I don't like to say things unless they're concrete, but I will say this: he absolutely has the desire to come back. The question is, will negotiations with the UFC prove satisfactory? He's in a position where he doesn't need to come back financially, and I don't believe that he needs to do anything in terms of his career legacy. He's already done enough. So if he comes back, it will be a choice. And but I know George trains religiously. And, I can say some of his favorite training partners are Eddie Cohen, Gary Todd, and Gordon Ryan. And I wish to God I could tell you stories of their training, because
unfortunately, what is in the gym sometimes have to stay in the gym, despite this look on your face. You're going to wait for the book. He's going to write a book one day. I swear it's going to happen, and I will ghostwrite it. And when I say ghostwrite it, he's going to write the whole thing, and I'm going to pretend to take credit
George is
for
one
it.
of the funniest people I've ever met who doesn't know that he's funny, which is the funniest person of all. The guy who doesn't know that he's funny is always the funniest.
So I have to ask you this, because I do a George St. Pierre impression.
Oh, go ahead.
Would you love to hear it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now, I've never done it to somebody like, oh God, he's sitting back, he's ready for judging all this. All right, ask George St. Pierre a question about something. By the way, this isn't working, so womp womp. Ask George St. Pierre a question on anything.
Tell me about your dating life.
It's very different. My dating life is I go out there and many a stripper. She look at me. You have a stripper, John Danaher? No?
You suck at George St. Pierre.
Oh, that's very nice of you to say. Most important thing, yes, no, see, is that when you combine all these words, it is both that of a Navajo and also someone from Quebec, Canada. So, you're welcome, John Danaher. It is so nice to be speaking with you at the Bravo Institute. I would like to say many other things, but thank you very much for your time.
John,
Not bad.
show him your fucking impression.
Oh,
No.
Oh.
I know, but you're just
what's the test now?
now you gotta do Chris Weidman.
Chris Weidman. Oh no, I don't really have a Weidman.
You gotta act quickly then. What's your favorite dinner? Chris Weidman.
I don't, I like, you guys ever like go to a strip club and like you have a steak there? I've gotten steaks there and I really like that. They're really, pretty good.
Not bad.
Not too bad.
Some people are gifted at heel hooks, strategies.
Okay, now the real tip.
Yes, sir.
The real tip.
Yes.
Gary.
I don't, it's hard to do a Gary impression because he's just like, I don't know, like dicks out for Hamre, am I right? Look, this is my penis, and the funny thing about doing Gary is that he's almost Gilbert Gottfried. If you really take him down, and if you squint, you would have Gary Tonin as this. If you are doing Gary Tonin as an impression, you have to say this is the tuning fork. There's always a tuning fork to get the impression right. You say the word, Gary, say the word tournament.
Tournament.
Ha! Tournament. You say that, and you get into Gary mode. I'm sorry, go on.
Do you say tournament?
Tournament.
That's how I say it.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's how you guys say it. It's all of your camp. As somebody who breaks down impressions, all of you down the line.
Okay, now the final tip.
Yes.
You're going to corner Gordon Ryan
I like it.
in my voice.
Oh man, I did. You know what? After we did our first interview, I had a spot on John Danaher. It was gone. Like 3 weeks later. So today, I was thinking about it. I was like, do I have a Danaher in me?
Okay, here's the test.
Yes, sir.
Gordon Ryan is caught in a full Judy Gatami arm lock. Okay. The match, he's ahead on points.
Crap.
But there's 30 seconds left. You've got to coach him through 30 seconds where his arm is probably going to snap.
This is the most spot-on improv I've ever had to do. Normally people say like, where are we? Give me a place, a thing. This is like, all right.
30 seconds.
All right, here's where we go.
30 seconds, Gordon Ryan.
Gordon Ryan, we have 30 seconds. I need you to, no, you're doing it wrong. Completely garbage. This is, hold on. Mr. Gary Tonin is next to me. He has been talking trash profusely about the things that you do. No, inside Ashi, fucking garbage. I quit. I won't do this anymore.
Simon Cowell.
No, Simon Cowell is more down here and dirty and not there.
You
This is
know
John Danaher.
what my biggest coaching fantasy is?
What's that?
I would love one day, while these guys are in some critical final, where the audience is silent, to just fucking flip out. And just be like,
Come on, man! Fucking hot, man! Go, 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 go! Get out of there, man! Go! What the fuck are you doing, man?
I would love to imagine the audience would flip.
I think they would. Or I'm waiting for the one day where like Warrior Spirit, man! Please! I'm waiting for one of them.
Squeeze! You gotta believe!
I'm waiting for one day for them to literally just look at you, and I think it's gonna be Gary more than Gordon. I think for him to be doing something and like say going for a Kimura or some bullshit and being like, you go, Gary, to the left, Gary, your other left, and him being like, I'm trying the best that I can. It's hard. It's Mr. Gary Tonin. He's going through a rough
I've been
there.
training all the time.
Yeah, in training.
In training that happens all, like literally that situation happens. I'm like, John, I don't know what you're saying. I don't know what to do. And John refuses to change whatever it is that he's saying. He's like, grab the left hand. I'm like, I don't know what. The left fucking hand. I'm like crying in the mess. I don't know what he wants me to do.
John,
There's no other way to say it. I'm a fall.
you just said you were a nice person. You have to keep the narrative consistent.
The truth is, in the gym, any one of my students will tell you I'm a horrible human being.
I just don't see it still.
It's the worst.
Yeah. Gary's not lying in that story.
Every single person who I talked to after watching that interview was like, so if you went there, you know he'd be the worst. And I was like, absolutely. Which is why we do our interviews not there. Because then we're on equal ground. I have to say, John, I could talk to you for hours, and I'm not going to. We're going to get you on out of here. But I would like to say this real quick. The first time we interviewed, you were great. The second time we interviewed, I'm starting to think now, I'm not liking you as much. Here's why. You're getting too funny. If you get too funny, at some point, I'm not necessary. So we need to keep me in the middle of this interview for the bulk of it. Your response.
Humor is a very fascinating subject.
Of course it is.
And it comes in many different forms, including forms where someone is taken advantage of. So, for example, I could have Gary Tonin put you in an inverted heel hook.
Please don't.
And he could just literally crank you for his amusement.
Yeah, that would be terrible.
And I could try and give you...
Get out! No!
And the people would love it. They would find it amusing.
Hold on.
You might not.
I would not. I'm gonna.
But they would.
Hold on. I've got 911.
You're
on. I've got 911. No, Gary. Gary, this is.
Separate the legs, Gary Tonin.
I'll break it. I'll break. All right. No, not the other leg too.
Good. Now, inflict the most painful of all horrors, the lace leg.
Oh yeah, there we go. Why is it?
Everybody loves a lace leg.
This has been Rafa Sparza. It's been a good amount of time.
Foot-to-foot pressure.
Why? I'm tapping. This is nothing will break. It's gonna be fine.
Fine work, Gary Tonin.
Push on his balls. Keep it here at verbaltapcast.com for more information. John Danaher, everybody.